Well, the purpose of the IVC filter is to catch a blood clot before it enters the lungs and potentially can cause a pulmonary embolism. The fact is that the design is so bad that they often create more problems than they stop. There are 200,000 implanted per year. It's about a $450 million a year industry. They use it when anticoagulation medication is contraindicated. So if they can't stop it with anticoagulation, they put these IVC filters in. But there's some very dangerous complications. The filter is implanted into the vena cava, which is the largest vein in the body. And that's a very dynamic environment of use. Between blood flow, diaphragmatic, and lung motion, it creates a very active area that interferes with the stability of the filter. And the filter itself, the designs vary. There are several of them on the market, but the recovery is a classic early design. It has 6 arms, 6 legs that have very sharp feet that attach to the interior surface of the actual vena cava vein itself. And they capture and hold the clots until they dissolve. The problems with the design, as Bard, one of the manufacturers, admitted in discovery, they failed to consider and to understand the environment of use when they designed it. The result is that it has 6 major failure modes. You have migration, which is a frequent cause of death. It's the most frequent cause of death in IVC filters. That's where the entire filter comes loose and moves in the vein. Perforation, which penetrates the vein itself and can penetrate adjoining organs, can penetrate the aorta, or they can become embedded, so they can't be removed. They can tilt, which makes them, first of all, ineffective, but also it can lead to it being prothrombotic, which means that they're actually creating the problem they're trying to solve. They capture blood and they keep capturing it to the point where a clot forms at the IVC filter when it's not properly placed. And the latest study of IVC filters, which just came out, indicates that the failure to remove an IVC filter timely can result in untreated clots that increases the risk of post-thrombotic syndrome by 90%. It reduces blood flow by 45%, increases the risk of creating a pulmonary embolism by 30%, and causes venous ulceration by 15%. So it's turned out that they are, as I said, they can create a lot more problems than they ever solve. So the FDA has warned that you should remove it within 1 to 2 months after the initial implantation. The big event that happens a lot, especially with the Bard filters, is the fracture. This is where part of the actual leg breaks off and perforates the organs or the spine. In a case that I currently have pending, a nurse fell. She got a knee injury, which caused the threat of a DVT, deep vein thrombosis, forming in her calf and moving up to form a pulmonary embolism. Since she was immobilized, they put in an IVC filter in 2009. They left it in as a safety feature. The doctor said, well, you may as well just leave it in because you'll have an additional safety figure to guard against clots. 6 years later, she's on a plane on a cross-country flight. She has chest pain. When she lands, they rush her to the hospital. She's experiencing severe loss of blood. They do a CAT scan. They find that the leg is missing from the filter. They put her into open heart surgery. She's lost 1 complete unit of blood, which they suction from the pericardial sac. They can't find the fracture, the little leg that's missing. The doctor takes the heart in his hands and finally lifts it and finds that the little metal leg is perforated. It's right there in the pericardium where it's causing a constant blood leak. They located it just in time to save her life. 6 days later, they go back in and remove the IVC, the complete filter. When they do so, they find that another leg is still missing, and that's still true today. She still has that other leg somewhere in her body. And since the first one almost killed her, she worries daily as to when she'll discover and how she'll discover this one. Now, the warning about this is so many of these were put in 2010 and 2011, 2012. The fracture rate is at an average of 5.5 years. She had had hers in for 6 years, no problem whatsoever, until the day it almost killed her. Well, the culpable companies in this case are Bard, which is being sued in multi-district litigation in Arizona. They knew about the problems with fractures of their recovery, which was their first device, and their G2 device before they put them on the market. And most of the current markets are being models are being removed now in 30 to 60 days. But there are thousands of their implants that are still in place that are just now reaching that 5.5-year mark. Cook, which is in an MDO in Indiana right now, was very aware that they had a very high perforation rate before they put these products on the market. J&J Cordis is also out there, and it's in smaller numbers, but they have the same problems. There's some question about even the efficacy of these products. There's no scientific evidence that the IVC filters actually prevent pulmonary emboli. But another problem is that in a 2010 study that was published in the Archives of Internal Medicine, they found that nearly half of all the IVC filter implantations were even necessary. That 25%, they didn't even need them. 23%, they couldn't agree if they needed them or not. So that's why the FDA has recommended that they be removed as soon as possible. Now, we get misleading statistics on this. The adverse event reports are underreported by doctors, and patients don't know they have the problem. There's no basis for diagnosis if there's no symptoms, except for imaging. You need a CAT scan to check for design defects, and the first knowledge can come too late. If you have an IVC filter in your body, ask your doctor to prescribe a CAT scan or to call a lawyer who will arrange testing before you discover the hard way that you have a problem. Tell the doctor that the FDA says to get the filters out as soon as possible.
Now to an NBC News investigation that we've been working on for a year, looking into a medical device that was designed to save lives, but is instead putting lives at risk.
One person who deserves a lot of credit for advising the public about this was a lady named Kay Fuller, who was the subject of an NBC Nightly News interview. Kay Fuller was the Bard liaison with the FDA. Her job was to get approval of the retrievable filter and nurture it through the FDA process. When it came time to submit the filter for approval, Mrs. Fuller refused to sign the submission to the FDA because she felt the company had not determined what the cause of a fracture was that had occurred during their own clinical trials. According to the news report, Bard forged her signature on the submission to the FDA to get approval.
Your signature's on it.
I did not sign this.
That's not your signature?
That is not my signature.
After the product was put on the market, multiple fractures occurred, exactly as Mrs. Fuller had feared and warned. Her story on NBC alerted a lot of potential victims of the danger of long-term implantation of IVC filters. So if you have an IVC filter in place and it was put in after 2010 and it was put in probably up through about 2014 and you've had symptoms, then give us a call and we'll be glad to discuss this with you. Call the nation's law firm, 1-800-269-3050.